donates a lot of money to everything. God knows who he is.
All right, we're coming in. All right. Okay, here we go. All right. All right, we're good, y'all. We're good. Apologize for the first round. It should be coming in now. Did you guys close out and open the new one? Should be good. The first one didn't work out too well, but we should be all right. It's happening. Yep. One. Testing. Hey, it works now. We are back. All right, we're good. We're good to go. Could you hand me my phone on the chair in there too, quick? I gotta reshare it to our communities. Alex is helping. Apologies for that, y'all. We had a little technical difficulty. The stream didn't want to start at all. It just died and then killed the stream, the first one. So we're good to go. We have a special guest today. Good to see you, sir. He was a Cav scout in the Australian Army, and he's now here volunteering for the third time in Ukraine, in Kyiv. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
My name's Michael. I served in the Australian Army. I did one tour in Iraq, and I've come here because the Ukrainians need help, and I've got a lot of fulfillment for them. So I'm looking forward to helping as much as I can.
And he's doing great. And do you mind going into a little bit of what you're doing here to help the Ukrainian military?
So it's been mainly civilian evacuations. We did.
Here, buddy.
We did civilian we did medical evacuations the first trip, and then civilian evacuations from the front line. So we'd go in and get people when no one else could go and get them. A team of 4 of us, and it's been great. It's been good to get them out.
When was the first time that you had arrived to Kyiv? Like, when did you first get here? Because like I said, this is your third time. When was the first time?
The first time was in August. I think it was August to September, just before my birthday, and we came in, and I come in to do some photography initially and just start doing some reporting on the ground, and I ran into an American who wanted to do, he was doing medical evacs, and we sat down and had a chat, and he learned about my history, and he's like, oh, do you want to come work with us, help us out? And I said yes, and we managed to help quite a few people. It was very good. And then I ran into the team I'm working with now, Iggy, and we started doing civilian evacs from Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Chasiv Yar, all the frontline locations where none of the other NGOs would even go. They wouldn't even. They don't even go as close as we sleep. So
right.
It's good that we could get in and we can be someone's last hope. And there's been some interesting days, but all in all, it usually comes out with a good story when we get involved. So.
Yeah. What was the hardest experience for you when you first arrived here? Because you're like seasoned now, and we'll go into some of the stories you shared. Because we met Mick at Operator Starsky's birthday party. That's where we had met him, and that's why Starsky thought it was so funny. It's like now it's how connections are made, though, you guys. What was your first? I'll just go. What was your first most memorable experience of that first trip?
My first one was an interesting one. We had to go to, I think it was Liman, and that was a little bit back from the front, but we had to go to a nursing home, and we got there's 30 or 40 people on that trip. So I think it was 1 or 2 ambulances full, a small bus full of people, and there's this little old babushka, and she stood up to me chest height, and I looked at her, and she was too short to actually climb into the bus. So I got the interpreter. I said, "Come over, ask her if I can lift her up and put her in the car, in the bus." And he's like, he translates for me, and she's like, "Oh, da 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 da," and I gently pick her up. And as I pick her up, she gives me the world's biggest hug and all these kisses on the cheek. And she, in Russian, she's speaking at 1,000 miles an hour. And the Terps just look at me. I'm like, "You need to translate," because I've got no idea what she's saying. And he's like, "Oh, she's thanking you." She says, "Love you," blah blah blah. And that one, I still get goosebumps. Like, It was the most pure experience of gratitude I think I've ever experienced in my life, and I'd be surprised if it could possibly top that. It was magical.
What would you say about your overall experience in Ukraine? Is that a common experience you've had? This magical experience?
Yeah, we get we get a lot of gratitude from the people that we go and rescue. On a fairly regular occurrence, we get they'll make us breakfast or they'll make us something to eat. So when we turn up, but another one was in Chasiv Yar. We went to pick up a lady. Her husband was going to stay in the house As we drove into the town, on their street, because Google Maps isn't very accurate, and we drove into the street, and the number it told us was a house that had been destroyed that night or the night before. And we're sitting there, we're like, we're late. Like, why didn't we come yesterday? I don't know if we could have even come the day before. You know, we're looking at ourselves going, why? What? We should have done something. We should have come earlier. We should have come late last night. We should have done something. And we're driving around, and we're like, oh, let's keep looking. Maybe the address is wrong. And we run into a man, and we're like, oh, we're lost. We need to find this house. And he's like, oh, this is the street, but you've got to go this way. And he's explaining it, but his explanation was not very good. The fella I was with was Ukrainian, so it wasn't like me not understanding. It was just wasn't making much sense. And he's like, no. So he walked us up. So we drove up, and he's like, it's on this street. It's not that way, but it's that way, but I'm not sure where. And we're like, okay. So we're driving up and down this street like a lost cabbie. It was the funniest thing. And we get to this intersection, and I'm just like, bugger it. I'm sitting there just beeping on the horn, beep, 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 just non-stop. And she comes out, and this little old lady, she's like, oh, hi, come up. And she waves us up. We drive up there, and she's like, oh, come inside. We've got something for you. And we're like, oh, okay, fair enough. This is interesting. We walk in, they'd made us breakfast. So it was like this massive stack of pancakes, these big, fat, fluffy Ukrainian pancakes. It's so good. Homemade honey, homemade tea. The soldiers made some wine, and they didn't get to drink it before it was ready. So she's like, you can have some of this too. So we're having this little breakfast feast in the middle of a war zone. And the best thing about it was their house was completely untouched. Every other house in that street was either completely destroyed or close enough to it. That was unbelievable. And so we sat there, and it felt like her favourite grandson had invited friends over to meet, and she was looking after us until he came home. Like it was that sort of level of how they treated us. And it was, again, goosebumps. Like it's that they have nothing, and they're like, no, you must have something to eat. Like, we understand all that sort of thing. And it's those, again, it's just those moments, man. Like, they're just magical. You can't get it. And that's part of the best experience I get is the gratitude from the people, but more importantly, my internal gratitude through my entire life. I've managed to go through good, bad, and horrible things. And it's given me a set of skills which enables me to do exactly what I'm doing. And it's something that I look back on my life, and as I experienced some of those bad things, I've thought, why me? Why am I suffering this? But I realise now that all of that pain and suffering was for the moments now that I get, that I don't think there's any other experiences in life I could have had to achieve what I do now. And for me, it's something that is something that you just, if you read it in a Hollywood movie, you'd go, this is nonsense. You'd just go, this is just ridiculous. It's like the director's off his tree. And I get to live it, and it's something that is just, it's just amazing.
Words are hard to even put it into description sometimes. So you talked about the training and the experience that you've had. Would you mind talking about that a bit? We had mentioned he is in the Cav Scouts in the Australian Army. Would you talk about that and your past experiences in the military that led you to come to Ukraine and some of that training?
So we were Cav Recon and mounted vehicle operations at Aslov's. And our training, because our unit, everyone was expected to perform well above what was the standard, and I'm grateful for that. So you never got a chance, or if you did make a mistake, you got in quite a lot of trouble for it. You got corrected, and so the standard was always expected of more than what you're doing now. Doesn't matter how good you were, always better than that. And it's something that I'm grateful for. That all that very, very difficult training was facilitated me being able to do what I do, vehicle operations and movements and all of that sort of thing. And then when we went to Iraq, prior to that, our training was brutal. Like, it was a couple of months, and it was minimum of 12-hour days, and it was just again and again and again. And a minimum of 12, that's probably very much an understatement. Probably more, minimum 14, 16, though. It was ridiculous. And then I did my tour in Iraq, and we had the experiences I had there, and it enables me to just sit in this job, and not even a job. I don't get paid for it. I pay for myself. I bought my own vehicle. I pay for everything, all my fuel and stuff. So it allows me to I still call it a job, but it allows me to do this mission, and it fills your heart. Like, it's just something that, you know, especially when you get out of the military, you sit there and you go, I need a mission, and you look around and you see so many of the complaints and the tiny things that people get stuck on, and coming here puts everything into perspective, and it enables me to go, I'm good at this, I can do this. There's a real definite outcome that's very much a positive. The people look at you and go, you know, the people we've gone and gone, why are you here? You're Australian. Why are you on the other side of the planet? Like, because you need help. I can do it. That's why I'm here. You know, if it wasn't for me, then if it's not me, then who? You know, I can't expect other people to go. I can't sit there and go, oh, well, you should go do something. You should go do this. You should go do that. When I know that every morning I got up in the morning, I looked in the mirror and go, why am I here? Why am I still in Australia? Why am I still living where I live? And in comparison, being lazy, when I could come here, work a bit harder, and provide people a benefit that is something they truly, truly need.
Big point there, because I mean, I had served in the U.S. military, so I understand like your government sending you somewhere and wasting time in the desert for however 2 decades that we did, and then being here, and like you had mentioned, the majority of the people that come here are funding themselves to come here and to help the Ukrainians. It's not like a sent mission, or you're not being covered by, you know, it's you and yourself that is doing that. What is the biggest difference that you experience between Iraq and Ukraine? What is the biggest difference?
Oh, that's a good one. So there's several. Where we were, we would get good and bad, very, very good and very bad responses from the locals. But here, even before they know you're a volunteer or you're helping out, the locals are always very polite, very warm to you. But when they find out you're a volunteer, it's completely different. They sort of look at you and go like, "Thank you very much, but why the fuck are you?" You know, like, why are you here? You idiot! Like, why aren't you somewhere else that's nice? And you explain to them. I explain to the people I meet what I do, and at first, like when I explain it, some people look at me and go like, "Oh, that's not a real thing," and I show some of the videos, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, wow, all right, like you understated what you're doing," and it's pretty funny because the general Ukrainian hospitality is amazing.
Yeah.
But when they find out what you're doing, like it's even down to the small things. Like if you go to park somewhere. I went to a park at Taras Shevchenko, the main, most famous park in Kyiv, I think. And I was waiting in line, and there's people coming in and out. And there's a man in front of me, and he went to pull in, and he saw me behind him, and he comes back, and he's like, "Oh, are you trying to park here?" I'm like, "Oh, yes, please." And he's like, "Oh, well, you take my spot." And I'm like, No, I'm happy to wait. Like, it's not my city, it's not my town, it's not my country. And he's like, No. I'm going to wait here until you park in there. Like, there's this how it's happening. And then you go to places, and I don't like to say it, just because if you sort of, for me, if you brag about it, it detracts from what you do. Yep. But when like if I'm out with someone who knows me, who's a local, they're like, "Oh, you go to buy something," like, "Oh, he's a volunteer." I'm like, "No, just leave. I'm happy to pay the price. It's whatever. They'll get a discount, or they, like when I go to a restaurant, they see the size of me and they go." He obviously, like, you order a meal and they bring my meal out, and it's like twice the size, and you sit there, and it's the small things, like the things that I suppose if you weren't paying attention you might not notice.
Yeah.
But I try and be as attentive as possible, and it allows you to spot all the little bits of gratitude that people do, and it's something that it's very amusing sometimes, and it's very good.
What was the biggest thing from Iraq and our time there that was so different from the welcoming experience that we have here, that what you would say?
Obviously, the people here want us here.
Yeah.
They don't just want us, they need us here.
Yeah.
And the ease in which they will help you when they see, if you stop at a checkpoint and they look at you and they start questioning you, and then you show them your card that says I'm a volunteer, and they're like, Oh yeah, no, just go. They might look in the back sometimes, make sure you've got no weapons or anything, but they look and they're like, "Oh, no guns?" Yeah, they see the armor and they're like, "All right, you're actually here for a reason. You're not just, like this is some of the NGOs who want to come for a booze cruise. Yeah. You're actually doing the work." And
We'll get you to talk about that.
don't let me go on too much about that one because I might say some things that's going to get me into trouble. But you know, like it's all the smaller things. Like, you know, if you're driving along and you're in a rush to get somewhere, the people see you behind in the vehicle I drive, and they move out of your way. Like they make space so you can get through. In the Donbass, when you're driving up, if they look in the mirror, they see you're a military vehicle, they reef out of the way, like, and so you don't slow down. Like, if you're on a job that is, we're going to somewhere that's spicy, you're moving quick. Like, as soon as we get the call, we're like, all right, let's roll out, let's go. And so we'll be doing 150, 160. And they'll see us, and if they're not paying attention to the mirror, you flash, and you flash like 100, 200 metres back, rip out of your way, and you don't even have to take your foot off the accelerator. So it's those small things that when you need to get the mission done, the locals, especially over there, they make sure that they facilitate you in some way to just go and do that. They don't want to hold you up. You get a little bit of that in Kyiv. I've only had probably, in the last couple of weeks, I've probably had 2 or 3 people who've sort of actively sat there and gone slow, which is unusual, and that's what makes it stand out. But generally speaking, like, you know, if I'm going from point A to point B, I've got something to do, and I need to get there, and I just want to hurry up and get there so I can get back. And sometimes it's, I want to hurry up and get back so I can rest, because, you know, you're constantly going. Like, I'll wake up in the first thing in the morning and go, oh great, I've got a nothing day. This is I'm gonna have it, and your phone's going, and you're like, oh, I gotta go do something. So you get up out of bed and you put some pants on sometimes, and then you go out and you do what you got to do, and then eventually you get to chill out and meet someone like yourself or this one. He does drink Irish tea exclusively though, so just so everyone knows, I think he might be a bit of a turncoat.
A bit of a turncoat. He's drinking.
Undercover, man.
Yeah, he's drinking.
Speaking of this one though, I actually think he's going to go full British because he drinks nothing but tea now. Just exclusively drinks tea.
It's actually in my bloodstream at this point. It's full on in my bloodstream.
So when he gets back, make sure the TSA checks him out for a red coat. Like, you got to make sure.
Speaking of that, would you mind sharing? We have a big Australian audience. Would you mind sharing where you're from in Australia?
I'll just say Queensland.
Okay, that's nice.
Nice part of the state. So it's, but I lived all over the country. So.
What was your hobbies in Australia? You must share, because you shared one with us that was fucking.
Oh, I won't say that one.
Oh,
I'll tell you about it. I promise it's perfectly PG rated, but this bloke needs to come down and he wants to come with me. So maybe we'll do a live stream of him doing that work. And see if we can get it up. So back home, I love photography. That's what I did for a business. But for me, the art of, or the experience of getting out and walking to places where no one else goes and getting the photos from there, that's the idea of photography, because everyone can go like Sydney Harbour Bridge or the Opera House, and you can spend as long as you want there and eventually get the photo you want. But everyone's seen those photos and they've seen them 1,000 times. You want to give people the visual experience and the emotion of experiencing something for the first time, because that's what truly is the best thing about being a human, is the brand new experiences. The motorbike, obviously. Driving completely sensibly at all times. I'm a good boy. For any of the QPS watching, always ride responsibly. But yeah, I enjoy the bush. I enjoy getting out. And one of my other things was, if I can teach someone something that's like someone I know, the joy of getting them to see them experience something for the first time, or learning something new for the first time, is pretty magical. So if you know something and someone around you doesn't, take that time to get out there and teach them that, because the gratification you get internally is worth more than, you know, all the fancy clothes or cars or any of that garbage. There's more value in letting someone else experience something with you, like on the bike, taking people on that bike who's never been on a motorbike, and being responsible about it. So, you know, on that bike, it's loud, it sounds amazing, but it's beyond quick. It's teleports. For the bike people, it was a Ducati Street Fighter V4S.
Oh, let's go.
In black, obviously. And you take someone on your bike, and some dudes on bikes, they'll take someone out and they try and scare them. And I'm like, why would you do that? Not especially the first time. You want to take them out and go, especially when they're terrified of going on a bike. You put them on there, you drive them around nicely, a couple of blocks, you take them home, and you're like, that's enough. And even if they say, I want more, you say, no, that's enough for the day. and it creates that drive to want more in the future. So they'll come and start pestering you about it, and you're like, all right, we'll do this, and you take them out and you take them a slightly longer run, and then eventually you build up and you get them so they're comfortable, and you also get them so they're sensible in the back. But getting someone and seeing the joy, like it's this childlike wonderment that you experience on your face. Like, you know, when you're a young boy and you're like, oh, I really want like a bike for Christmas, or I want Legos or Meccano or whatever it is. Yeah. And when you get it, that joy that you experience, like and it's from the tip of your head to the tip of your toes. Like, it's just something that if you can facilitate that for other people, there's more joy in that than there is in going and spending money on some nonsense that you don't really need.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I try and always strive to do, because I always like pushing people's boundaries and like helping them expand. And you never know that maybe this tiny act you do now helps them grow, not just as a person, but helps them grow in joy and experiences for the rest of their life.
Absolutely, the personal development and growth. I mean, it's skills that you can't put a price on. You can't buy that. Yeah. You know, you can't go to the store and get that. You know, it's life skills. What is the biggest difference between? Because this is your third time here. You're basically living here now. You're this is your home, your second home now. You know, what is the difference between back home in Australia, Queensland, in contrast to being here in Ukraine?
It's a good one.
Another one, maybe, why do you keep coming back?
Because they need help.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's the thing. Like, the external reasoning is they need help and I can provide it. Mm-hmm. The internal reasoning is the personal satisfaction and gratitude I get. Like, and the mission. Like, the mission's a massive thing. But getting all of those things is something that it's nothing. There's nothing else. Like, I love.
You don't see it back home like this?
No, God no. You know, where I live, people will complain about that they got a gift of a car and it's the wrong colour. You know, it's this sort of nonsense. And you sit at a restaurant and people are whinging about, oh, the weather's terrible today, and it's like, you know, it's 24. And the sky's perfectly blue, and they're like, oh, how can I deal with this trauma? My life is ruined. You know, and you look at them and you're like,
what the fuck? Yeah.
Please, for the love of God, get some perspective.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. Is like, when I was growing up, Aussies never really whinged about stuff like that. Like, that was just not a thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now it is, and it's something that it actually angers me to a degree.
Yeah.
Like, I sit there and, you know, my experiences are only this much of the world, right? A tiny fraction. But even in my experience, I try and not whinge about stuff, because I know people personally who are experiencing significantly worse than me, and actively experiencing it. And that's another reason I come, is because you get. So this is the big thing, is that I get to help someone who, most of the time, I don't know their name, and if I do, there's not much chance I can pronounce it.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I get to do something. You know, I know I risk my life to do it, but I get to help someone that I don't know, that I'll never meet again, and get them out of the worst experience of their life, get them to safety, and I don't want anything for it. Like, when I get a hug or a kiss on the cheek from a grandma, I can't possibly want anything more. Exactly. You know, like when they make me something to eat, or they just, you know, they shake my hand. What else can I possibly want? You know, I get to help someone who truly needs it. I want absolutely zero in return. But it's to me, it's the purest form of what I as a man should be, is that I get to truly help someone and be that person that they never expected to see, and get them away from that. So you can't put it really. I mean, I'm amazed you put it into words, and I'm learning, because I can't even form words about it. Same question now to Alex. Let's take it. What's the biggest difference between being back home in the UK now and why you're coming here? Because this is also your third trip here. You're basically going to set up shop and live here for the rest of your life too. Yeah. So what do you see back home in contrast to here?
I find it actually increasingly hard to go back home and not get annoyed at the things that people get frustrated about almost. Like you go back and you realise the pointless things that people worry about and complain about compared to the civilian population here being terrorised every day and living under full-scale war. I think it's I don't belittle anyone living around the world, and we all only have the problems that are relative to the life that we've lived. But when you come here and you're in a place where, for example, when we were bombed over the NATO summit the last couple of days, most people that haven't got military experience like you two find that incredibly scary, right? So they will be awake, they will get up and hide in the concrete bunker, and they will basically have no sleep. And then, you go to, Lift 99 where we go, and they're all there working again the next day. And they've been doing that now for a whole year, if not longer, isn't it now? A year and a half now. And it's just that resilience and that just get up and crack on, I think is something that certainly in the United Kingdom we've lost a bit now, because it's a good thing to have lost to some degree, because we've had life quite easy and nice. But when you experience this, you start to struggle, I think, to be in that environment, and so, I guess on the flip side, I'm very grateful for what a safe place I live in, right? It didn't sound, it's very different to the world that I think you live in as well, though, Andrew, right? With, I can walk out at home at night, just stroll around in my pants, as I do.
Let's not lie to the people. We know you don't wear pants.
And everyone runs off screaming and they stay away from me. No.
Personal space.
Yeah. They're like, oh my God, it's him again. No, but I live in a very safe place. I don't have to lock my car. Don't steal my car. It just makes me more grateful for that. But I find myself having less tolerance for annoying things and for moaning about pointless things, Andrew.
And that's, the United States is like the Karen of it all, it seems, because we got lots of, we don't really have, like I mentioned on my stream last night during my war reviews, we don't have like something that's unifying us in the United States right now. It's all just fight. We're just literally at each other's throats, and it's also reflecting in our social quality. Like Alex said, unfortunately, like last night, I walked out 10:30, 11 o'clock at night here. People are out literally dancing, literally going and getting a drink. Not you're the alcoholic or non-alcoholic, because in the parks they have bubble tea and coffee, and it's all open. Whereas in the U.S., once it gets dark outside, you're taking a risk, honestly. It's not the safest to be out at night in the United States, unfortunately. In certain areas, yes, you gotta be pretty rich and live near the coast, likely, and be in certain areas of the U.S., but it's just not anything that I'm experiencing here. Literally, I can go out at night and it's no problem. People are unified here. There's a common goal. There's something that they're working towards. And I feel like we've lost that in the United States completely. I really hope we get it back. I love my country. I'm going to be continuing this. I served my country, and I can only hope for the best, and maybe bring some of this experience that I've had in Ukraine back home and just start sharing that, and maybe it'll take hold, but it's got to happen. Now, going back to Ukraine, both of you too now, but first with Mick, what has been the hardest experience so far now while you've been in Ukraine?
All right, this is a bit of a sad one. So there was a husband and wife and a daughter in Bakhmut, and the team went and visited her quite a few times. And every time they went in, the Russians were getting closer and closer and closer, and kept talking to her there. Let's leave. No. And we had a few, we'll say, interesting days. There is some video on my Instagram, but I'm lazy to update it. I'm terrible with it. Yeah. But we had a couple of very close calls, and we said either we're making mistakes, we're tired, we're doing something stupid, or we're intentionally doing riskier things. So we said, all right, let's have a break. So we drove up to Kyiv, and we got up here and we slept, and the next morning we all went to breakfast for coffee, and we got a call from her, and she's like, "You need to come and get us. You need to bring an armoured vehicle." And we're sitting at the table, 1,000 kilometres away. Where the fucking hell are we going to get an armoured vehicle? And she's like, "I sent the army." And I'm like, we're all like, they're busy. They can't. And what had happened was, I think it was the day before or the night before, artillery round had landed either in the back door or in the back of the house or whatever it was, and it killed the little girl. The little girl was 10, and both the parents were severely injured. And you sit there and you go, we gave you, as many opportunities as we could. Like, why did you take them? And we sat there and we're like, because when he first said it, they need to get out, and I knew who they were, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And he's like, it's a hell of a long way. And then he told me the rest of the story, and I'm like, what are we supposed to do? So that's the hardest thing, is when there's kids there and parents make stupid decisions and it traumatizes a kid, and or the kid gets killed, and you sit there and you just sort of you try and understand why. And that's something that it will live with me forever. Maybe there's something we could have said, or just grabbed him and thrown him in the car. But that's something that always bothers me, is when the kids get hurt. It's something that, if you're an adult and you're there and you make your decisions, all right, that's fine. I can understand why as an adult you'd make that decision to stay. If you're 70, 80 years old and you spent the first 50, 60 years of your life under communism, and everything you've got now is everything you've got, truly everything you've got, and you're desperate to protect it, I can completely understand that. The first 50 years of your life you're under communism, you had nothing. And then you spent, the last 30 years making what you have. I can understand that. I don't think it's the best decision, but I can truly understand that. And I say that because I come from Australia, and our lives are amazing there. No matter how shitty you got it in Australia, it's an amazing life. And when there's kids there, and you try and use like every sort of negotiation tactic or marketing tactic or whatever, anything you can come up with, psychological tactic, and they refuse to go, that's something that, it bothers me. It really upsets me. So,
Was this a common thing when you were evacuating civilians? Did you have issues with them? Did you have more issues with them wanting to leave, or were you able to facilitate that more?
I'd say like nearly all of them left.
Okay, good.
And that's what sort of sticks with you, is that the ones who don't, and I'd say come late to the party, but that's not what it is. It's like we are the last one we're the only one there who's willing to go in and get them when we go in. No one else was like, except the military. The military will pick them up and scoop them up if they can. But the only civilians, we go in. And the ones who say no, quite a few times bad things have happened. Like we went to Avdiivka and we rescued, it was 5 or 6 of them, I think it was. And a lady and an old lady who was immobile. I don't think she was paralysed. I don't think she was crippled, but I think it was, she's just very old and she was on a stretcher. So we got her and her family out. And in that building, there was 15, 20 people or whatever it was. And, their building is one of the last buildings facing the front line. So, like, they're there, look there. And if they look out the window, they could probably see the Russians. And, like, let's go, we'll get it. And they're like, no, there's no room. Yeah, all right, we'll drop everyone we have in the next safe town. We'll come back and we'll just shuttle people. We'll work something out. Like, we'll organise. We'll make it happen. No. And the next day, Russian fast air asset come over and dropped a bomb in the building, killed everyone. And I understand there's like a psychological phenomenon there of it's a fear of action. So they start with, my town's safe, and then my city block's safe, and then my street's safe, and it's house either side is safe. Then my house is safe. And then the bunker, or not bunker, but the basement underneath is safe. And they just contract and contract and contract. And it seems like those sort of people, the only time they leave is when something directly impacts them or their family. And, you know, it's a bit late then. And it's something that hopefully as I learn more of the language, I'll be able to sort of lever people out of their position and explain to them, hey, we will make you safe if you just trust us for 10, 15 minutes. Because in that 10 or 15 minutes, we can drive 20 k's. Like, we get a hell of a long way. It's probably a lot further than that. How? Probably 40 k's in that time. Like, we get scooting. We do. Contrary to what people argue about with Land Cruiser 78 series, they will do 170. 100%. Not mile an hour, obviously. Right. But normal measurement, normal people measurement. For yous, it's 100 mile an hour. But those things will scoot. Now, granted, it was downhill, riding the Bakhmut, but I made that thing sing. So you can get scooting, but you know, all they need to do is trust us for 5 or 10 minutes. That's all we need to get them to do, and most of the time we get them to do that. You know, we get. I have like that like sort of either or. They look at me and they're like, oh yeah, no, we can trust this dude because he's built like a house. So if anything happens, he's going to get hit first. It's fine. And then you get the other ones that look at me and they're just like, and they sort of creep away because they're like, who's this giant dude? Yeah. And you know, that actually leads into another story. So we were on the northern side of the highway north of Bakhmut, and we went to this little village.
Is this Road of Life from Chasiv Yar?
No, it's a different one. So there's Bakhmut's here, and then there's the highway that wraps around to the north and on the eastern side.
The E40?
I think so. I can't remember off the top of my head. But on the northern side of that, there's some village, like proper Ukrainian villages, like proper rural villages. And we drive into this village, and we find these people, and we're like, we can get you out. So your mother, I think it was mother, grandmother, either grandfather or uncle, son and daughter. And the day we went to pick them up, we had 2 media people with us because obviously we utilised media to help us get donations. And so they were there doing their job, and they were really good. It was a Spanish lady, and I think it was a Spanish gentleman. I can't remember, Maria, I think her name was, and I can't remember the man's name. But they're there, and they're, you know, fairly small people. And I was at the car doing something, sorting something out, and everyone else was over there. And the rest of my team is like fairly short, well, compared to me, fairly short. And they're all standing on the porch. And I come around the corner, and a little girl sees me and just dives behind her mum's skirt. And it's like holding, like looking around. It was like straight out of the movies. She's like, this tiny little eye just peeking around the side of her mum's dress. And I see her, and I'm like, oh, hi. And she's like, just hides, straight up hides. And I had a chuckle, and I'm like, all right, I'll just go wait at the car until everyone's sort of moving a little bit, or we need to start moving stuff. And, you know, they're like, oh, come over, we're moving. So we go and help them with their bags and stuff. And we get them in the car, and I get everyone to place the boy at the front, the girl next to him, so I could see her in the mirror, because kids can sometimes get a little bit excited, a little bit panicked. And so in this car, because the back window's painted, you can't see, so I use it to see if we've got people in the back, keep an eye on them. And so I got some Ukrainian music, is one of my favourite bands, and it's called Fiinka, F-I-I-N-K-A. And it's like traditional Carpathian sort of folk music kind of stuff. And I love it. It's great. It's great to blast. And I turned it on. I turned it up a little bit louder than I would if there's people in the car. And Grandma was like not too happy about it being so loud. I'm like, what the other fella's like, oh, she's not happy. I'm like, she's fine. It's for the kids. And we're cruising along, and you see her sort of start just gently bobbing her head. I'm like, all right, turn up a little bit more. And as we got further and further away, she sort of started mouthing the words. And I started singing, and my singing voice is worse than my wrecked talking voice at the moment. It's traumatic.
It can't be.
Oh, God, my God.
He's doing great for early in the morning. He's doing great.
My God, and it's not because I'm hungover, it's because I've been yelling for the last couple of days. She starts singing the words slowly. And I'm singing along, and I'm trying to sing louder and louder to give her sort of like that permission so she can do what she wants. And just as we get on the highway, she starts singing the song, and she's singing loud. She's bopping along, and I'm like, perfect. I got what I needed. I got her to go from being terrified to letting out that stress through song, and it's something that's it's very helpful. It's something that's that was a really, really good day. It was.
Thank you for sharing those stories with us. Just stories that you can only hear from the people that have directly experienced it. Same question to you now, Alex. Was what is the hardest experience you've had so far? Oh yeah, go ahead. While you've been in Ukraine.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I think just like you, Andrew, that's a pretty sober reminder, right? That this is a very, very real situation here. For me, probably the most outside of some of the people that have lost here that I've known was sitting with my family in their apartment under an air raid and seeing. I'm the great uncle to Victor, and he's got a little daughter Nika who's like 1.5 years old. So like seeing your family and the little girl under attack and living in that environment was like heartbreaking. And I think like going through that and just being there with her was that moment when I realised that I had to like just keep going till the bitter end to try and stop this war as soon as possible, because I can't have my family growing up in that environment. That's not fair. It's not right, and I felt, I almost feel embarrassed being able to go back to a different life where they don't have that choice. So for me, that was a really horrifying moment, but also a sort of a galvanizing moment to be like, nah, this is not cool, and I now need to do everything that I can to stop this happening and to keep her safe. And I'd been to visit Busha a couple of days before, where obviously little girls like her were raped and killed, and it was just like, that is not happening to my family. So that's probably been the toughest bits for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that experience. For Mick, what are the things that you've seen now since you've been here, you were with the soldiers yourself, that Ukraine needs? I mean, we hear it all the time. I mean, obviously F-16s, main battle tanks, things that really, that's the governments are up to. But just being here, what is the things that the Ukrainian soldiers need the most?
So from personal experience, one of the things I think they need is more training equipment. Simunition would be perfect. For those who don't know, simunition is, you can use the same rifle effectively, but you change the projectile for a chalk round. And so it's something, when they shoot, they can actually see it impact the target, they can get practice, because there's a difference between sitting there and just pretending to shoot and saying bang, 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 and actually putting rounds down range and seeing where your rounds go, and actually understanding that when you aim, you actually need to aim. You need to square yourself away and get rounds on target. Blanks would be amazing. So I'm buying a heap at the moment. I've got to go spend $200 tomorrow out of my own pocket, but I'm utilising that because there is value in them understanding how loud gunfire is. For those who don't understand, if you've never heard a rifle up close, right, yeah, it's loud. It
can deafen your ear.
Oh God, yeah.
And that is a perfect point. Really quick. We were in basic training, and the first thing our drill sergeant did is he pulled out a rifle, some blanks. He says, "All right, who's never fired a rifle before?" And like there were a lot of people raised their hand. We're in the U.S. Army, and people have never fired a rifle, including me. I didn't fire a rifle before I got in the military. So he had us all lay down in the circle, and we had blanks, and we got to fire like a whole round of blanks just to get that feel of what it's like.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that. So I managed to get a blank gun and crack a couple of rounds off when they weren't expecting it. Every single one of them was like, holy shit, the hell was that? Yeah. And like, that's how loud it is. Now imagine 60 of you doing that at the same time. Hearing protection. Yeah. They desperately need hearing protection. Like even the crappy 3M earplugs would be better than nothing.
The one we're getting, we're getting paid for now. Yeah.
Yes.
They're shit.
Yeah, they're
Even those
horrific.
would help, I guess.
Literally anything, like it's almost to the point where cigarette butts in the ears would be better than absolutely nothing.
That's so ironic. We just watched combat video last night, and he's a 50 cal gunner. You know Civdiv on YouTube at all? Yeah, his what is it? It was not Arnie. Arnie's in the Cognac. His call sign's Cognac, and he's in the 50 cal. He's a gunner, and you saw him open his cigarette pack, and he broke off his filters just to put some in.
Yeah, it's remarkably loud. Like you try and explain it to people, but if the infantry are working with even artillery is beyond deafening. Like you stop hearing it and you just feel it, and you feel the impact on your ears, and then you hear for the rest of your life. You just hear and this is non-stop, like I'm hearing now. Like I can hear it over the traffic. So it's something that unfortunately have to live with forever when you don't have good hearing protection. But training aids would be, in at least where my purview is at the moment, would be the best thing, because it's all good giving them Gucci gear for the front. So Gucci gear means like fancy equipment, just for those watching at home. All the Gucci gear at home, but
Not handbags.
not handbags. Each to their own. All right? I can't go into battle without a Gucci. All right? That's just not allowed. But hearing just the equipment to train, so that the equipment they're given they can utilise effectively. The men work with what they have, and they desperately want to learn, which is amazing. And if you can help them do that, that's something. There's quite a lot of things, but I'd say it needs to start at the base, because you can do more with bad equipment, good training, than you can do with amazing equipment and not good training, or less than good training. So
You train how you fight, right? Yeah. Exactly.
If you bleed in training, you bleed less in the battlefield. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. In U.S. military, we got the crawl, walk, run phase. It's like they literally hold your hand as a little baby adult, and like step by step. Hey, this is the command. What did I just say? And then you got to repeat it, and then it's a whole process. So, and then now, same with Alex. What do you think after your experiences and you're delivering drones and whatnot to the soldiers? What do you think the Ukrainian soldiers could use most?
Oh, wow. Very quickly, just as you started talking about your experiences, I do think on one of these shows we might need to interview you as well. Like I think, I don't know if anyone's done that before on your own show, but it could be interesting. What I get told, it depends on the unit, right? So, your experiences at the training end, which makes a lot of sense. At the front, at the combat, so in assault, I still think some of the most important equipment is the ability to fight in all conditions, be it day and night. So thermals, night vision are still a Gucci item, a seriously Gucci item. So
beyond a force multiplier. So I said a troop with us NVGs, like binoculars, you don't want to just run a single, because trying to walk through the bush with one on is just not a good thing. Thermal scopes, all that stuff multiplies the capability of, say, that 6, 12, 30 men from that level to 2, 3, 4x, because especially if the enemy hasn't got it, if you own the night, you are beyond lethal. You can rotate from day ops to night ops, and if you're doing that intensive, like what's the word, on purpose, like if you're doing it on purpose, your capabilities go through the roof, and it allows you to move, shoot and fight at night. It's an amazing thing. And comms and communications. Comms are everything, man.
So I think that's because I think Andrew says a lot on his night shows, doesn't he? This is an infantry and an artillery war. There's no air support, so the infantry are key. And I think, in some instances you might have a squad of 12 guys that have night vision, but then others don't. But if everyone had night vision, or more had night vision, and then those laser targeters, so they're actually pointing out targets and all seeing it in their night vision, that would really make a material difference in counter-offensive activities, which was why the convoy that you came on, Andrew, with artillery out, we had £100,000 worth of that stuff in the trucks, right? And we're doing that and spending that amount of money because it really makes a difference, that amount of money on night vision, we could have bought a lot more trucks, but actually, pound for pound, night vision ability to fight in all conditions is probably key, mate.
And then now for a grander scale question for like our governments in terms of missile capabilities, because we just got the cluster bombs were announced, and we had a conversation, and I asked you, how useful is that, and you had said, oh, it's a munition, but this is really what we need. Would you mind sharing some of like the more grander scale that the governments could be giving to Ukraine, like missile capabilities or what have you?
That's a very good question. The longer range missiles in larger quantities would be a big thing, because the smaller amount makes you very, like, you don't just spray them. It's not like the Americans will send just, you can dodge a drop of rain, but you can't dodge the rain.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yes.
But I'd say a larger quantity would be something that's easy to facilitate, because you just keep shipping them, keep sending them, and they can keep sending them. I imagine behind the scenes a lot of the intel is being shared, at least to a certain degree. EW capability would be good, but I'm not sure. Like, EW mainly for drones would probably be the best thing. Mm-hmm. But my understanding of the Russians' communication is it's not that. It's not like NATO forces, not like Western forces.
Sucks.
But locking that down even more would be good. But I think long-range weapon systems, arty, just more arty. It's it's a World War I, World War II style artillery battle. Just overwhelming them with artillery. Effectively getting them to the level of the Americans, where they can just send it just constantly, again and again and again and again. And they shouldn't need to do the refits of the guns. Just send a new gun, bring the old one back, West refits it, and then send it back again. And like, these boys are getting, I think it's like 10x the lifespan on the 5 or 10x the lifespan on the barrels, which is beyond amazing.
Yeah, that is.
Like, if you said to your boss back home, like, oh, we got a gun here with 5x the amount of rounds it's supposed to have, he'd probably just pass out. Like, oh my god, what the hell's happening?
Yeah.
But shells, arty shells, long range arty shells, the larger caliber arty, SPG. But teaching them to do shoot and scoot. So they push up, they dump their load, and they leave. Instead of being near the front, just always rolling through. That obviously increases maintenance and stuff significantly, but that's a lot better than trying to hide. You can't hide at the moment. It's just not possible. And when we understand the drone threat very well, and that's why our movements are what they are. And that's, you just want to get in there, send it, get out. And I think arty would probably be one that's very easy to start producing in mass numbers. Like, all the West could produce, I don't even know how many shells a year.
A lot.
And they should have already been up to full production, I think, is the big issue. So training and arty, long range strike capabilities would be the three biggest things. Training, because it increases the effectiveness of units on the ground. Arty, mainly the biggest reason, I think, for significantly increasing arty and running self-propelled guns, which are tracked artillery or tractor-wheeled artillery. I'd say wheeled's probably slightly better up until winter, like up until end of fall, start of thaw. Run up, send a heap of rounds, kill all their arty, pull out, and just keep doing that. And it's sad, but it's going to have to be a war of attrition. If you can kill the air cover, their artillery cover, it enables the troops on the ground to be more methodical in moving through minefields, and it helps reduce that risk. Obviously, you still got AT, anti-tank weapons, ATGW, anti-tank guided weapons, I think.
Yeah.
Being able to take them out is significantly harder, but that's more of a drone spotting, using thermals, because you usually can't hide those systems very well. And if you catch them on the move, then you hit them with arty. Airburst, shells, send it. I think those three things would significantly change the tide. Unfortunately, especially down the southern front, my understanding is the entrenchments and the mining of that area is just beyond significant. So the only way forward, I see killing their arty, which is going to be hard. Killing their close range arty with SPG, killing their longer range hardy with guided weapons.
Guided weapons, yeah.
But that requires more live feed for intel, which is only possible at the moment by satellite. You can't really stick any airframe in the sky. And also, that's another point. Someone mentioned, why don't they have more medevac choppers? They have medevac choppers, but they won't send them because they will get taken out instantly.
The air support. What's that?
Do you want some questions?
Yeah, we'll take a couple questions. One final. I'm going to ask one final question before we go and we do the viewer questions at the very end of our feed. So you guys are asking some great questions, and you guys always do that. You're tuning in to Good Morning Kyiv. Our morning program. Our special guest today is Mick Dundee. He's a Cav scout of the Australian forces, and now he's out now, and he's here training Ukrainian soldiers, and also provided rescue efforts to the front lines of Bakhmut. And you guys watched Brandon Mitchell's YouTube channel, the Canadian. He did similar actions and filmed it, but this is another individual that did that. What is the biggest thing you're going to take back? What is the biggest thing you're going to take with you as a life lesson from all of your time so far here in Ukraine?
So he distracted me a little bit. The biggest life lessons. Being more aware of what I should be grateful for. I don't see, even when the war ends, I don't see my time ending here. If I can eventually get to enough people who can support me, I'll just go into demining, because that's one of the biggest things that's going to affect children the most. It's going to affect the farmers. It's going to affect food crops. It's going to affect like a wide variety of things. Being able to demine afterwards still gives me that mission, and that's something that I think there's some, using engineering, I think there's some better ways to clear the mines quicker. So if any engineering geniuses out there, hit me up on Instagram. I'd like to chat to you about maybe some of the feasibility of some of the ideas I have. But I'd like to be able to do that, even automating it to a degree if it's possible, or at least automating the scans or the sensors to ID exactly where they are, so when the people come through to go look for them, it makes it slightly safer. But I think demining is the next thing. It's something that, you can't just defeat the enemy, you got to defeat the remnants of what was there. In France, in the Somme, I think it was, they're still digging up shells, they're still digging up things like that. We don't want to repeat in the east, especially in eastern Donbass or in Zaporizhia. That is the biggest thing, especially after the dam got blown up. There was a lot of mines pushed downriver, so no one knows where they are. And I think that tracking them down and getting rid of them is something that's very, very important. And that's my mission, is to I'd prefer if no one even knew who my name was. If I had enough money, you'd never see me. I certainly wouldn't be on camera, because I'd just be doing what I can do. But I only use it. I use it as a tool to enable people to help me help Ukrainians. I don't need a fancy life. I don't need to be rich. I don't really care about that. I'd like to be, obviously, eventually like to be comfortable, but missing out some of the more fun toys in life is not as important as helping people live their life, and maybe preventing a child getting killed, or someone going for a walk in the forest or whatever. That's my next mission after this, and then helping rebuild Ukraine. Trying to start a business so I can employ Ukrainians and just keep feeding that money in, so that the people themselves can rebuild their villages, rebuild their lives. Gives them a mission. All the soldiers after the war, they're all going to need a mission, and if I can help facilitate that, even 0.0001%, that's something I'd really like to do, because I saw how our government treats us, or just ignores us mostly. you can't expect the government to solve all your problems. So the best thing I can do, I see the flaw there. I know what it is. I've got not a perfect understanding, but I've got a good understanding of what would have helped me, help the men I serve with. I'd like to be able to help the Ukrainian men who return, or the Ukrainian soldiers who return from the battlefield, get back into life. And I know if they work with me, there's that sort of shared brotherhood, even though we don't speak the same language. The reception I get is slightly different from those around me, especially those who haven't served. And it's sort of like you've done this before. Okay, so it's a different level of communication, and I think that would be a good mission to have.
Absolutely. So the demining and then the aftercare that's going to be required for the veterans that have been serving here, because like Mick mentioned, I mean, unfortunately our governments, it sounds like Australia is not really too much better than the US in terms of caring for veterans. I think it's starting to turn around maybe a little bit, more pressure that we can put to the VA for the US. You know, the veterans health care isn't the greatest. Minnesota, we have really good VA, but nationally it's not, and people are waiting times just to even talk to someone. Someone could be on hold for a half hour, and during that half hour that could be that'd be too long. So starting that here in Ukraine and sharing our experience of how shitty our governments were for us, that could help Ukrainians. And same with you, Alex. What is something that you've learned that you're going to take back home with you or beyond if you live here, if you set up shop here in Ukraine?
Oh wow! Well, for me, I mean, this is very much a lifetime's of work now. I think, as and I think Mick has throughout this show very eloquently put it. Demining is something else that I've been getting involved in lately, and there's a new unit that we're trying to create actually for this region alone. Because for example, we still have a significant amount of landmines in previously occupied Russian area around Kyiv Oblast here. So there are a lot of farming areas that can't be farmed because it's not safe to do so. There's a lot of woodland that people can't go to. And I think that is going to be a huge issue. And the rest of the unexploded ordnance for the whole generation. I know, an absolutely tragic story of even a man and his girlfriend that went to their favourite woodland spot with some friends for a barbecue not that long ago in this oblast, because the problem with here compared to where you go, is that it can feel normal again here, but it's not. Like, it's not normal out in the woods. If you go up to where you visited in Hostomel, the Russian positions were mined, and they tragically stepped on some, and one lost their life and all of the others lost limbs. So it's still insanely dangerous, even very nearby to where we are. But I'm very interested in building amazing Ukrainian businesses that will export around the world. Ukraine has traditionally been the country where people go to outsource cheap tech labor or stuff like that, and I think there's going to be an amazing opportunity to build Ukrainian businesses that are selling their services and products around the world, and that we're buying from them, not selling to them. And I think that will be a really incredible thing to be a part of in the future, mate.
And you're not wrong about that, because just in my short time here, I've seen how many tech startups there are, how many businesses are growing and booming here, and it's just like Alex said, I think it's going to be the other way around, and we're going to be getting things, buying things from here and not, whatever. So now we're going to take some viewer questions. You guys go ahead and start sending them in. I'm going to go through the super chats right now first, because I know some of my, you have some saved?
I've recorded some for you.
Okay, sweet, awesome. And then he also noticed one too he would like to answer about how he clears his head after this, and we'll get to that. So June with the $40 says, for your drone and mortar fund. Awesome. Yes, we have built a little over $400 now for the drone fund.
Wow.
From last night. Yeah. So that's growing. Mark, thumbs up to Aussie T. David says, go buy that man a beer. Steven says, thank you, Michael, for your service in Iraq and Ukraine. That's to Mick. Awesome. Donnie, $2. Thank you. Slick says, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. Angry Bear says,
Okay.
cool aviator jacket. Put some, I just put this on. It was kind of cold this morning. They said put some patches, so I'm like Top Gun, Tom Cruise or whatever. Yeah. Aussie T, of course, with the $50 says, buy the man a beer. Thank you from all of us down under. David says, get that man another beer. So we got to get you
He's gonna be a great trainer, isn't he?
Lars. Everybody take care from Lars. Don't put the avatar yet on the jacket. Highlight the sweatpants. Chris, those blokes all deserve a beer. All of them. Revenge. Welcome back, Revenge. I haven't seen you in a bit. Second round is on me, mate, after Aussie T's round of beers. Bro, there you just, as soon as you go back.
I'm trying to get thin, people. I'm trying to get thin. Stop trying to make me. I'll buy some protein powder or something.
Miss you all. Australia will take the ashes. Wayne with another drink fund. Slick Willie, thank you for joining. Brandon, Ukraine, TBIC also did evacuation. Yes, we had mentioned Brandon Mitchell. He's doing the Kungsleden, big Swedish. He's in Sweden right now doing a hike across the largest hiking trail in Sweden. It's massive. It almost takes the whole freaking country. It looks.
I actually worked with Brandon a couple of times, and he's a very, very good operator.
There you go.
It was truly a pleasure working with him because he was co-pilot for me, and seeing how he operates, and he just does everything. You don't need to say anything. He's like, yep, this, done. We roll in, get a job done, roll out, and it's beautiful.
You heard it here first, right? Personal experience. He will be back soon for his EDIA tour. Well, I'll make sure that these two link because I might not be here, but we'll make sure that they get numbers. Go fast, don't die. Gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, Steven. Did you get basic language skills and techniques to convince them to do more? And do you have a saying?
So my Ukrainian is, I think the correct word is, I won't say that word, is terrible. Terrible. Thankfully, the team I work with all speak Ukrainian and Russian. So working with those boys is truly a blessing for me. Like I couldn't, if I could have handpicked a team, I couldn't have come up with a better group. Like the boys are just amazing to work with. I started